Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. And check out, visit CoolStuffInc.com right now and use the promo code Magic Mics to save 5% off anything in the store, singles, sealed supplies, whatever you want, get 5% off. But use the promo code Magic Mics, use it. Check out the promo code, do it. And check out our co-sponsor, Mana Traders, the best tool to enhance your Magic Online experience. Use the code MagicMics_8N48 November 4 for 10% off your next subscription with Mana Traders. Tell them we sent you. We appreciate it. My name is Evan Earl. When we get started, we want to say hello to my two co-hosts, Power Dragon.
What's up, everybody? I'm going to do my best to not just be angry and hateful at Eldrazi for the next hour.
So mad, so angry. Ruben Bressler.
Use that energy to save the multiverse. We can do this together. Just like when Liliana of the Last Hope beat Emrakul the Promised End in the finals of the Pro Tour, so too shall we emerge victorious in our episode.
That works for me.
Wow. Well, we also begin with our choice of the top comment from the last top 10 we did in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent, letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 Outlaws of Thunder Junction cards. Ruben?
Hey, Apples is the winner this week. Had a pithy and brevity is the soul of wit. And Hey Apples writes, the new invitational card Duelist of the Mind is fairly insane. Even in a low pre-release environment, I saw it pop off repeatedly. In constructed formats with better tools, I expect that it will have even more upside.
Wow. All right. Well, if you didn't know, we'll go ahead and bring it up here on the screen for you. Duelist of the Mind is a new rare from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. It's a blue and a generic mana. It is having Nathan Stour, the world champion, on it. It's a star 3, so a 2-mana star 3 flying vigilance. And its power is equal to the number of cards you've drawn this turn. Whenever you commit a crime, you may draw a card. If you do discard a card, that ability only triggers once each turn. And this thing can get absolutely silly and has a lot of really awesome words and has evasion and has the ability to pump itself. And Brainstorm says hello.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Mishra's Bauble also says hello, both with the crime and the drawing of the card. I mean, Gitaxian Probe, were that card legal in a format with this card, would both target and draw a card. Like, there's so many things that are possible with this. It plays really well with a lot of cards that are already good. Having 3 toughness is no joke either. There's a bunch of stuff that is, pyroclasm-like effects, so really powerful card. And that vigilance.
Yeah, there's been people goofing around with that in standard with like Proph's Eidetic Memory, because you get to put the counters for the extra cards that you've drawn and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of synergy there. I don't think it's quite there yet, but it's definitely one of those cards that you're always going to have to keep your eye on when you're deck building as more cards come out. 'Cause you're like, this thing lets me draw a couple cards. Hold on a second. And I think that's where it's going to live for a minute.
I think one of the most important things that they've done recently with the World Championship cards was they finally figured out, stop designing cards for them. Design cards, find the good ones, and then put them on one.
Yep.
So you don't have to do the weird, play testing and hope you squeeze it in. You got to work it in production and R&D and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, man. All of these cards that the World Championship winners have been over the past few years have just been picked out of the set as good cards. And
it's sort of like a menu instead of a whole cloth situation.
Right. They're like, here's 3 cards.
And the only thing I would say, just try to make it flavored as the type of card that person might play.
Right.
But I think when we went through that whole stretch of pros getting to pick the design and submit stuff, where it's like, that's not going to make it the final design. What are we doing?
Yeah,
so,
I mean, they're all busted and all free mana. And remember Linkith's Wrath or whatever, Finkel's Wrath, which was Wrath of God, but untapped 4 lands.
Because to be fair, the first few we got were actually solid.
Yeah, they're neat.
Shadow Mage Infiltrator,
Sylvan Safekeeper, right?
Solemn Simulacrum. But yeah, we had some good ones.
Yeah, Picculus was good too.
Yep.
There you go. All right, so appreciate Hey Apples being a part of the show. Stay tuned for our top 10 list this week and let us know what your choice of honorable mention may be, and we may highlight it here next time. As we get started here with Modern Horizons 3, the set is here. The preview is tomorrow. All 3 of us are going to be doing our stream things. It's going to be very exciting.
Yes. There is a tweet out that showcases all 4 of the Magic Mike's hosts. The 3 of us, as well as MTG Nerd Girl, will all be hosting on various channels. Evan is going to be on Magic Mike's. Mm-hmm. The 3 of us will be on our personal channels, MTG Nerd Girl, Power Dragon, and Mox Ruby.
There you go. So check us out tomorrow. Come hang out. I'll be on 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard. I'll probably be on more than that, but that's when I'll be streaming. So we'll have some fun with that. And yeah, the set currently about $5,600 if you want to get one of everything right now. It's a little expensive. But that's okay. But there's definitely some really cool cards in here. There's some really cool callbacks. I think when you look at the set entirely, at least sort of now that's had a couple days to kind of marinate or whatever, it's interesting to me how much they push in just little unique ways. This one I think they pushed in the energy cards being the callbacks to the old restricted list cards, which I thought were super neat.
For sure.
And they do that little bit, just a nudge, right? It's just a little nudge in that power level, moving around the edge. They know to try to keep that power level in check, you just have to go just a little bit further than you would before, and we keep metering that out as closely as possible. So let's go ahead and get started with our number 10 here. Ruben, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is an extremely powerful card, and we know that because they've printed something very similar to it in the past. When you have a Horizons product, very often you will get harkened back to old cards or be spiritual successors to old cards. Very rarely do you have almost functional reprints of cards, particularly ones that are already banned in a given format. And this one is already on the banned watch list for a format. It takes a lot to be on a watch list. You got to be, Yawgmoth's bargain level. But Cranial Ram is already on the Pauper Band's watch list for maybe being too powerful. Cranial Ram is a common for a black and a red. It is an artifact equipment with living weapon, which means that when it enters the battlefield, you create a 0/0 black Phyrexian Germ creature token and then attach the Cranial Ram to it. It equips for 2 generic mana otherwise, and it gives the creature that it's equipped to +X+1, where X is the number of artifacts you control. Cranial Plating was a card that ran rampant over Standard back when it was first printed, and was extremely powerful in Pauper until it was banned in that format. Both of those are 2 mana artifacts. Both of those equip for a cheap amount and give +X+O for the number of artifacts you control. This one, a little bit harder to cast. This one requires 2 specific mana, but it also gives you a creature along with it and an extra toughness. So on the watch list, I don't anticipate this will stay legal in Pauper for very long.
I appreciate the fact that they're not auto-banning it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is one of those things that's going to push Pauper a bit much, right? And partially because it comes with its own creature.
Right.
That doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but the fact that you don't ever have to move it, it just comes in ready to go. Very likely going to be like a 5/1 creature or something for 2 mana. That's a lot. That's really tough for that format to deal with.
The most common affinity deck in Pauper right now is Grixis, which includes red and black. It would be fairly simple to put this into a Rakdos aggro deck as well. It does make 2 permanents. So, and that deck also runs things like, Drossforge Bridge, which are another more artifacts. So I anticipate that this thing is going to get shelved immediately.
Yeah, I think the scariest thing about this card is just the stacking. You know what I mean? Play it and move it.
Oh, true.
To just one giant monster, 15/2 or whatever it's going to end up being, and just smashes you with it. So yeah, that's a very scary card. But scary's fun in many ways.
Scary's fun,
and maybe as the meta is going to meta, lots of shatters show up and shatter effects and shatter plus cards and split cards that shatter and so on. There can be enough hate where it's just not worth playing it, even though the upside is there. So that's always the question mark. All right, let's move on here to Power Dragons number 10. What you got?
My number 10 was an interesting choice. I almost didn't make the list, but the more I looked at this, I started thinking about things we like in Magic. We like 2 mana planeswalkers. We like getting 2 creatures for 2 mana. And just having stuff that's hard to kill. And this actually does a little bit of all those things. So I'm talking about a Johnny Nacatl Pariah. This is a colorless and a white for a 1/2 cat warrior, legendary creature, obviously. When it comes into play, it also makes an additional 2/1. The card itself is a 1/2 creature. But when one or more other cats you control die, you can exile this, return to the battlefield transformed, which happens to be a planeswalker on the backside, which is super awesome. So then you get a Johnny Nacatl Avenger, which is a +2 to put a +1/+1 counter on each cat you control, which is wild. But for 0, you can just make a 2/1 cat warrior creature token, which is kind of cool. And if you control a red permanent other than a Johnny, it deals damage equal to the number of other creatures you control to any target. So you possibly get some extra damage, minimum of 1 if you control some other thing, which it's not, that's red, that's not a Johnny. And then the -4 is opponent chooses an artifact and enchantment. Play. Basically, you give them the good old, we're just going to put you down to 4 permanents, which we like. So yeah, like this is overall really cool because I was thinking about things you could do with this, right? Anything that lets you sacrifice a creature basically gives you a 2-mana planeswalker, right? It comes into play, it makes the cat, you sacrifice the other cat, this transforms into a planeswalker. Like somebody's going to find a way to use it for this. And then you're just for 0 every turn, if nothing else, just like, all right, just going to keep pumping out dudes, you know, right? And dealing damage. Like this seems like a pretty sweet card.
It to me the most powerful part of this card is the 0 colon on the planeswalker, because all the creatures you control to any target, that means their face. So if you make a bunch of tokens or whatever, you throw this out there and have something to stack it, you boom, you instant hit them in the head for God knows what because you made a bunch of tokens being stupid. Or again, just random, you got 3 creatures and you make one and you deal them 4 to the head, or you deal 4 to something out there. Like this card is very, very good. There is a reason it's $30+ pre-order. This card is bananas.
Particularly with black sacrifice outlets, not only do we have Carrion Feeder, but we've also got lots of effects like Bone Shards in the format to be able to trigger this pretty simply. So, really scary card. I mean, 3 power, 3 toughness, good enough. Going ultimate on a Planeswalker the turn after it becomes a Planeswalker and sticking around is crazy. And for the Cataclysm, kind of for 2 mana, is insane.
Yeah, the Cataclysm's cute. It's the non-land Cataclysm, which that's okay. Sure. But again, they keep an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, or a planeswalker, and then they have to sack the rest, which is fine. But again, for me, the fact that it says any target, I feel like there was a world in which it just hit creatures and planeswalkers for a while, and they said, what if we just, push it up to any? What if we did that? Let's go up. Yeah.
Go upstairs.
And the crazy part is for 2 mana, you're going to get some effect potentially where you sacrifice the cat. So you get something for that. Then you get a planeswalker, and then that planeswalker can still make a creature. Right?
Wow.
Like that's a pretty good turn. Or even silliness, there's stuff still like Skull Clamp floating around. They're like, all right, I have a 2/1. That's a way to get rid of it and get some cards and get a planeswalker. Like that's awesome. It's like lots of fun stuff you can do with this.
Hell yeah. All right. So for my number 10, this is one of those there's a lot of what I would sort of say fluff in kind of a way, in terms of the set. Not every card is going to be the greatest design, whatever. And not every card is going to go into the annals of history. It's like, oh my God, look at all this is here. But I love everything about this next card because A, it's beautifully designed, and B, it's just wonderfully fits into the mold of the existing sort of template and setup, and that is Null Elemental Blast. Null Elemental Blast is a colorless mana. That is a Wingding colorless mana instant. 1 colorless mana instant. It's an uncommon that says choose 1, destroy target multicolored spell, or destroy target multicolored permanent. Much like the other Elemental Blasts that had colors on them, but this one is null. Already pre-ordered for like $7+ because it's silly, and I just love everything about it. I think it's beautiful for colorless decks. I think it's a really cool tool if multicolor gets too stupid or people get too greedy. This card is there waiting on them.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Actually, I was going to add stuff. I'm like, you kept going. I'm like, yeah. Like all of that.
Right. I think that its biggest use out of the gate is going to be destroying Leyline of the Guildpact in Modern.
That's fair.
That is a great 1 mana answer to getting rid of a huge piece of a very powerful deck.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, just such a cheap answer to get rid of some pretty powerful cards is one of those things you can't really ever overlook, even if just as a sideboard option.
There you go. So let's go ahead and move on here to number 9. Ruben, what you got?
My number 9 is a card that I imagine will find a home. We don't have there isn't an exact 1-to-1 thing that this does in Modern or in Legacy, but I particularly think that this will find a home in Tron, maybe in 12 Post in Legacy. There's a lot that this can do, and I think that Urza's Cave is ripe
Mm.
Ooh.
for having a place in future formats. Urza's Cave is an uncommon land that's a land Urza's Cave. That's a sentence that makes sense to Magic players. It taps to add a colorless mana, and it has the activated ability of pay 3, tap, and sacrifice it. Search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Just put it onto the battlefield. Any land. Also extremely powerful in Commander. I can't imagine almost
Yep.
any Commander deck not wanting Urza's Cave to go get, even just your command tower, much less something like a Reliquary Tower, much less a Gaia's Cradle, right? But then you can get your missing Tron piece, you can get your Planner Nexus, you can go get a Cloud Post, and then you can be even more niche, right? You can go get that new copy of Permanent in My Graveyard land, the green Permanent in My Graveyard land. You can go get a Dark Depths or a Thespian Stage. There's a lot of things that you can do with Urza's Cave that make it just a sweet spot and not too powerful. I think this is the right cost, maybe even a little expensive, but I think that it being a little expensive is good.
It kind of has to have the 3 mana cost,
Yeah,
right?
agreed.
Like, otherwise it's just too easy to set up, on turn 3 and start going off on turn 4 or whatever, right? You don't really want to allow that to happen. But this card, you're right, lets you search for a ton of powerful lands. Whatever your deck's trying to do, like you're saying, you're a Dark Depths deck. Okay, well, now you have possibly copies 4, 5, or 6 if you want them, or 5, 6, or 7 if you want them in your deck, which is pretty sweet. So, like, there's a lot of stuff this is going to enable, and would not surprise me if this ends up being one of those uncommons that goes for like $8, $9, $10 for a long time down the road.
For sure.
It's already pre-ordering for 7. Like, it'll go down a little bit, like a month from now, after kind of the race to the bottom. But I mean, long term, and if anything, and I think the designers have also learned this. If you're going to put the toe in those weird waters you haven't really put them in, make sure the cost is nice and high, because you can always lower it. You can always make this 2 mana, 1 mana, so on. But you don't want the first time you go find any land in your deck, carte blanche.
But this is Expedition
great.
Map. This is great.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
if it gets out of hand and you got to do something about it, at least it's only an uncommon.
Yeah, this
You know what I
card
mean?
will
Like-
be an all-star for years and years. It's got the cute Urza's Cave as the land type, which totally works, and I love everything about it. Yeah,
I'm
this,
looking forward to Urza's Desert in Modern Horizons 4.
Yeah,
you know it.
Book it. Call it.
hell yeah. Power Dragon, what's number 9?
Mine is one that I don't know if I'd say it's a centerpiece, but definitely a part of one of the other themes of the set, which is graveyard stuff. There's a lot that has to do with milling yourself, playing things out of the yard. And I wanted to have at least one of those on the list, and I decided to go with 6. It's 2 colorless and a green for a 2/4 legendary tree folk. It has reach. When it attacks, you mill 3 cards. Not when it enters the battlefield, which is interesting, but when it attacks, you mill 3 cards. You may put a land card from among them into your hand, but as long as it's your turn, non-land permanents in your graveyard have retrace. So you just have to discard a land in addition to paying their other cost. Like, this feels really interesting because I feel like we've been in a space where the milling and graveyard stuff, at least in Modern and to some extent in Pioneer or whatever, haven't been like quite there to be competitive enough in a lot of ways. But this is a really strong enabler that you can play as part of that and get access to extra removal, drawing extra cards. There's a bunch of cheap spells that you could totally make use of with Retrace. So it'd be cool to see if this card really does anything and pops off.
Yeah. I mean, there's an Aftermath Analyst deck that's very popular in Standard right now with Slugurk. Life from the Loam decks have been popular for a long time. And then, just generally like Satyr Wayfinder, Mulch kind of shenanigans. Putting that on a 2/4 with a repeatable effect to be able to play defense and give you effectively card draw with that Retrace ability is a huge deal. I think that this is such a good mid-range, like kind of what you want to be doing on turn 3 in those weird landy control decks that seem to always do just fine in Legacy and Modern. This is the kind of card you want dead center on turn 3.
And when we play 6 with like 8 Goyf, is that what we're
Sure.
doing now? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know, but it feels like a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, get this out turn 2 with an elf, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's possible. The 2/4 is also important, that a lightning bolt won't kill it.
Mhm.
That's a big deal and very important. My number 9 is unfortunately higher on somebody else's list, or fortunately, because it's a really good card. But that means I'm just going to go ahead and jump on here to our number 8. Number 8 is great. Number 8 is the first, at least on my list, of the reserve list cards. We got to fix them because they're crazy. Chthonian Nightmare says hello. This card is a black and generic mana for a rare enchantment. When Chthonian Nightmare enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy counters. Pay X energy, sack a creature, and return it to its owner's hand. That's all the cost, by the way. Return target creature card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. No, you can't target the same creature you sacrifice. That's not how targeting works. But this is Recurring Nightmare, at home. And is that good enough to satisfy those who don't like things at home? Well, I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, that's the part when I see this card, I'm like, part of me wants to just go, it's not gonna get there. But then the other part is we have so much stuff that just makes random energy now
Yeah.
that like it might be better potentially. Like,
Yeah.
like
I think that
hard
this might
to tell.
be better in its style of deck than Recurring Nightmare would be at this point in history because it's cheaper and because it is able to sort of build itself up.
Right.
2 mana is such a huge deal. You put this in just any sort of value engine deck. It's not a reanimator strategy. This is not Recurring Nightmare Survival.
Right. No.
This is played alongside 6, for example, to mill yourself and get some value. Play with alongside some mana dorks, and maybe we build up to a 4 or 5 drop that gets us some extra value. We play this with Orcish Bowmasters in Legacy. Like there's, you're not reanimating a Traxa with this, but you're definitely doing it when you're going off with this card.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're already on the energy strategy, just having a couple of these in the deck isn't going to hurt you, right? It's just long-term value when you have that extra energy sitting around.
Yeah, one of the sort of the bellwethers for me on this card is that if you look at Recurring Nightmare, obviously you didn't have to pay anything to sack the creature and return it to your hand. That was obviously the big difference. That also said, this is a 3 mana card, Recurring Nightmare is, versus a 2 mana card with Chthonian Nightmare, which to me says this might not be quite as powerful as it reads because you're going to burn through that energy. You might want to use the energy for something else, and by the time you've burnt your energy and brought your creature back, if they've killed your creature, well, then you just burn a bunch of energy and mana for nothing. So I think, what I mean? There's a resource exchange here that I think might be sort of under the radar, as it were. But I think it's a great card, and it's going to be really interesting to play with. So let's move on here to Ruben's number 8. What you got?
So my number 8 is I love hate bears, and nothing I love more than a hate bear that's really a bear. And we're going to talk about Kudo, King Among Bears. 2/2 for green-white, legendary creature bear. Other creatures have base power and toughness 2/2 and are bears in addition to their other types. This does a lot for us. This turns our 0/1 Eldrazi spawn tokens into 2/2s, and it turns our opponent's Atraxas and Blightsteel Colossi in Vintage into 2/2s. Effectively shutting down entire strategies. So if you can keep a Kudo on the board, then things are going to go crazy, especially if you have let's say we have a 7 mana Elish Norn on our side of the board, or we have a Flowering of the White Tree on our side of the board to get break parity. We love a Kudo King Among Bears.
Yeah, this card's just going to be a nuisance to some people. But I do like where you're going, though, with just making, like, Scion tokens or some other 1/1 squirrels or something or whatever, right? And being able to turn them all into bears. That's actually pretty cool, too. But it does have a lot of different combinations you can set up where you can just keep your opponent off creatures effectively.
Yeah.
I just feel like this feels like the designers were, like, sleeping. And then they just, like, woke up and, like, everything's a bear! We got it! Everything's a bear!
What if we had a literal hate bear? Like a bear that turns everything into just bears.
Perfect.
Everything's a bear. Everything's a bear. And it's like, Brad Nelson, chill out. He's like, everything's a bear. Everything's a bear.
I've played some cards in my day that set the power and toughnesses of creatures, and it ruined people's days. And those usually cost a lot of mana. Things like Harmonious Archon, Godhead of Awe from Shadowmoor.
Mm-hmm.
This costs 2 mana. That's wild.
That's crazy. This card's super cool. Power Dragon, what's number 8?
Mine is a throwback. Just I think there's gonna be a few of those on these lists of just like it gets an update. This is what it looks like now. And we talked about it a couple days ago, but Necro Dominance.
Ooh.
Like this thing is 3 black, legendary enchantment. You skip your draw step. At the beginning of your end step, you pay any amount of life you want. If you do, you draw that many cards. Though this time you have a maximum hand size of 5. And if a card or a token will be put into your graveyard from anywhere, it's exiled instead. So it's not quite Necropotence because it does have a couple of different limitations on the hand size, and then losing your graveyard is actually pretty relevant. So you can't put that into every deck. But man, the power here is still pretty high potentially. You know, just turning your life into cards, getting more options. Like that's never a bad thing.
It's
Also,
a scary card.
Of note, this card draws cards rather than putting them in a separate pile like Necropotence does. So Sheoldred says hello, which is not nothing.
That's fair.
You know, in decks where you just want to be churning out value, decks that are like Grief, Thoughtseize, 1-for-1 card advantage, and then you slam this down and recoup all that card advantage, I'm on board.
Oh, yeah, it could in Commander a deck like or a commander like Nekusar that cares about drawing cards and dealing damage. That could probably enjoy this.
I mean, shoulders on the board, pay 5, draw 5, gain 10 / gain 5, basically. I mean, goodness gracious. Yeah, this is, you know, arguably the scariest, maybe, perhaps, I don't know, of the cards that they're including in the set, because it definitely feels like one of those cards where it's busted or it's unplayable.
Right.
There's no two ways about it. There's no, it might creep in the meta and it might leave the meta. No, Necropotence is Necro Dominance is either there or it's not there. Mm-hmm. I don't
Scry either names it the worst card. Wait, was it Scry or Inquest? Inquest names it the worst card in Ice Age, or it takes over everything.
Or it beats
everything. Maybe it comes down to how good is it when you don't have access to Dark Ritual.
Yeah,
like,
also true.
That's what we'll find out.
Because I played Necropotence in Timeless, and it's awesome. And, you know, I knew Necropotence, and you, sir, know Necropotence. But it could be enough, though. They've given it every advantage they possibly could. Let's put it that way. Ruben, what is your number 7?
My number 7 is a card I'm very excited about. It is a weirdo. And it has been confusing me, because I have been looking at the casting cost and the fact that it is devoid and have been confusing it with another very good card in the set. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk about Kozilek's Unsealing, which I find to be a very exciting tool for a kind of deck that I quite enjoy. Kozilek's Unsealing is 2 generic and a blue for an uncommon enchantment with devoid, so the card has no color. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4, 5, or 6, create 2/0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature tokens with sacrifice this creature, add a colorless to your mana pool. And whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 7 or greater, draw 3 cards. So this is really exciting for me because I think that this makes Emerge a playable stratagem once again. And I really like Emerge. We've got a couple more Emerge cards coming in this set, things like Crabomination. And those casting costs don't change even if you pay the Emerge cost to make them cost less to you. So you're paying 3 mana for a 7-drop. The card still sees it as a 7-drop, even though you're not necessarily paying retail for that cost. That value of drawing 3 cards just for a single 7-drop is enormous. Not to mention the fact that if you play a 4, 5, or 6, there's plenty of Eldrazi, there's plenty of mid-range creatures that cost 4, 5, or 6 that allow you to invest effectively in the future and then maybe play a 7-drop the turn after you play them.
I mean, are Affinity players the most excited about this card?
Oh, for sure. Affinity with somebody's companion, Artificer's Companion, and Mirror Enforcer, and
like the Cannoneer guy or whatever. Is he 7?
And Kappa Cannoneer is a 6-mana card. Lots of great stuff to do in Affinity. Mirror Enforcer, draw 3 cards, and then Thought Monitor, draw 5 cards.
Draw 5?
Very exciting.
Bruh.
Exactly.
That's crazy good.
You know, first thing, F the Eldrazi, but
yeah.
this is so much stronger than the card it's originally based on. Yeah, like Sarkhan's Unsealing was fun,
Yeah.
but this almost fuels itself, right? You play it on 3, you play a 4 or 5 mana thing the next turn. You get to make some tokens that you can sacrifice for mana. So now you can play the 7 mana thing and then reload your hand and do it again. Like this card is really silly. Somebody's gonna find something dumb to do with this for sure.
Yeah, it's the kind of card that if it's not dumb out the gate, it's always going to be in the back of the mind of every deck builder. Of
Mm-hmm.
like, did something go really stupid, or they make enough of more affinity cards, or whatever? If anything, honestly, I'm surprised they still have Devoid. Devoid is
Yeah.
still showing up on cards. I thought
Yeah.
they hated Devoid and didn't like to do it. Why are we going back to it if they just trash talked it the whole time? But
Yeah,
still
I'm
here.
with you. I'm not really sure why the cards in the set have Devoid other than their Eldrazi, I guess. But like, they could just have colors and be fine.
Yeah,
Like it's a weird thing.
it's fine, I guess. It just seems a little silly, but whatever, man. It's all good. All right. So for number 7, that was Ruben. Power Dragon. What's number 7?
Well, remember I was talking about graveyard stuff? Well, we have another card that works really well with that in Shifting Woodland. It's a land that comes into play tapped unless you control a forest. It taps for a green, and it has Delirium of 2 green green, and it becomes a copy of target permanent card in your graveyard until end of turn. You can activate this only if there are 4 or more different types among cards in your graveyard. This is cool. Like being able to copy a permanent opens so many possibilities. Like, because one of the things some graveyards decks have issues, or mill decks, I would say, self mill, have issues with is sometimes you end up putting the card you want in the graveyard, right? And you're kind of hoping to play stuff that either can get it into your hand or whatever. Here, you're just like, well, you know what? I'll just turn this into what I need till the end of turn, and I'll just take advantage of it. And that's pretty damn cool, especially considering that it can also be a creature after a sweeper or something goes off.
Yeah.
You're like, great, I still have a Goyf. Take 7. Like, like whatever. Like, this is going to be a really interesting card to see where it ends up because it can do a lot of things.
Right.
This card is, I think, the scariest from a like unstable, unproven perspective because of well, primarily one word, and that one word is omniscience. If you put omniscience into the graveyard and copy it with Shifting Wildwood, well, we've just made a brand new deck.
I'm okay with this.
There are lots of cards that have good effects while they're on the board. We don't necessarily need the trigger of getting it onto the board in order to make them good. Things like Hullbreaker Horror. But Omniscience is really what I'm afraid of with this card.
I mean, I think what we found, over the years is that the arms race of graveyard hate and creature hate has gotten to the point where you can have really crazy powerful effects in the zones, whether it's the battlefield for creatures, the graveyard doing silly stuff, because Rest in Peace exists, Leyline of the Void exists. Yep. Everything's exiling, cards as they enter and leave and discard to do whatever. And so it's like, yeah, cool. You can push the hell out of this because you're going to have graveyard hate against you anyway, more than likely, certainly after sideboards if you're playing best of 3s. And, go nuts. Let's have it be cool and powerful while you can before they get rid of your graveyard anyway. So, card's dope. All right. Moving on here to my number 7. This is easily the card where I was like, of all the cards that we've talked about, even so far, and even the ones we're going to, there was only really one where I was like, did you really mean to print that? Did you seriously mean to make Warren Soul Trader? Because this card is ridiculous. This card is insane. How can this card not be stupid? Warren Soul Trader is a black and 2 generic mana for a rare zombie goblin wizard. First of all, 3 very important creature types. So it's a 3 mana 3/3. Pay 1 life, sack another creature, create a treasure token. So you're trading life for mana. Scary, but you got to have creatures. Gosh, we never have those things that like recur out of the graveyard for a jillion reasons or whatever. And so like there's the reason it's like $12+ pre-orders as a rare because Jesus, guys, this card is dumb.
There has to be a combo thing that I'm just missing.
Oh, for sure.
There's like 800 of them, aren't there?
Yeah. There has to be. Because I mean, like, you just sack a thing for a life, get a treasure, get the thing back out of the graveyard. I don't know. Like, there's got to be something.
Yeah,
There's gotta be something.
there's let's see. I feel like there's an infinite combo. There's got to be something that's like when something dies, make a when an artifact dies, make a 1/1 that can
Sure.
combo with this.
Yeah.
Blood
Now that being
Artist
said,
and Blood Artist and
you
Gravecrawler. Thank you, Andrew.
you're
Blood
at
Artist
least
Gravecrawler, perfect.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say because you need to not be limited by your life total. But yeah, something like that is a perfect example.
The only thing I can see, because because I'm old man Magic, right? So okay, so why is this card not busted? For example, I think one of the reasons is, at least so far, it takes 3 cards for that combo to work.
Yeah.
It takes this
Okay.
thing to live. It takes the other 2 to exist and not be messed with or stopped in any way. And so when there's 2 card combos, that's a problem. That's Splinter Twin. But if there's 3 card combos, those are easier
We can
to
live with
disrupt.
that.
You can
Yeah.
change and mess
And
with
it's
those.
a 3 toughness, which like lightning bolts and whatever still
Right.
exists. So that's fine.
Right. So there's things, it's fatal pushable, isn't it? No, it's not. That's 2 or less, right? By default.
Well,
But
yeah, but until you sacrifice one.
Yeah,
Once you
exactly. Once you
sacrifice
sacrifice something, you can hit it.
right. So again, so much removal hits it. It takes 3, but still, this thing is so scary.
Absolutely bananas. Yeah, I love this card.
Crazy, crazy. Okay, so let's move on here to number 6. Now, of all the numbers in all the world, of all the cards to choose, I have the same number 6 as who?
As me.
As you. So let's go ahead and let Ruben get his out of the way, and then we'll talk about our number 6. Ruben, what you got?
Well, this is an old man magic moment, but it's not even that old to me. We've been around a while. This is medium man magic. This is relatively young man magic. Back in my day,
Mm.
in the long, long ago of 2012, 2011,
Ooh, in the
2012.
before times.
In the
12
yeah, I
years.
know the before times. The ancient ones used to uh, wonder if Black would ever get to interact directly with Planeswalkers. And then finally, they gave us Heroes Downfall, an extremely popular 3 mana card that allowed Black finally at rare to destroy target Planeswalker. Cut to present day, and now we have the same cost on the same type of card, except for that it does the same thing, but it gains a life and is common. Breathe Your Last is a generic, a black, and a black for an instant from the new set that is a common that says destroy target creature or planeswalker. You gain 1 life for each of its colors. Amazing that we've come this far.
Yeah, this is interesting because, we've had the other reprints. We've even had recently a 2 mana one that you could discard a card or pay 3 life. Bitter Triumph, I think, is the card.
Yep.
So, we have other options available, but this one randomly gives you life for the thing that you kill. So, that's a good change of pace for that extra mana, all things considered. But, a pretty sweet card, though.
I mean, this is Heroes Downfall plus plus on a common. I mean, there's no 2 ways about it. But it's how far we've come in the old 12 years. This is also the type of effect where it'll go down to 2 mana one day. Go ahead and mark those words, and we'll all be going, "Oh my God, I can't believe we can Doomblade a Planeswalker. This is crazy."
Exactly.
When again, Bitter Triumph is honestly kind of very close. So this is neat. This is one of those just another mark on the side of where we're. Okay, we've passed this mark, we've passed this mark, we've passed this mark. Well, we've taken these things that are rares, we've made them commons, we've made them better, and ultimately Magic is still fine. It's fine. It's okay. All right, so let's move on here to our number 6. I'll tell them what it does. Power Dragon,
Yeah,
you
go
go
for
ahead
it.
and break it down. Our number 6 has already been banned in Historic. I don't like pre-bans for what it's worth. I understand in some ways, obviously, blah, 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 but I really don't like them because I'd rather things make themselves a problem before you just decide they are. Whatever, because I was like, damn, I cannot wait to play with Harbinger of the Seas in Historic, and they won't let me. That's lame. Harbinger of the Seas is 2 blue and a generic mana for a rare 2/2 Merfolk Wizard. Non-basic lands are islands. That's it. The end. Take it away.
That's all it has to say. I mean, because, now first off, Merfolk getting thrown a bone, cool. I don't have a problem with it. It's a deck people like. You still see it pop up from time to time. It still struggles a little bit, but, if it hits the meta the right spot, it's all right. But this, already having the options to have island walk and like you just make basically everything islands on the other side except for one or two lands a lot of the times. Like this, yeah, this card really, really good. I feel you on the, not wanting to pre-ban stuff, but man, like between this and being able to sack a creature now as a counter spell and all this other stuff that's in the set, like, yeah, I get it.
I mean,
I'm a big
they give us
fan.
the flares. I swear.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Merfolk. I'm a big fan of moons. Blood Moon, Magus of the Moon. We can now play 12 moons in our Blue Moon deck. Keep those punish those super greedy mana bases. I
Mm.
love that. I think that this card is amazing and great, and I like that it exists. Um, and I am sad that it won't be playable in every format that we would like for it to be played in.
And if you play a Blood Moon and then you play a
Oh
Harbinger,
God.
they're all islands. Just so you
Sure.
know, the timestamp wins. So,
Yes.
at least as I recall in my judge training all the years ago. All right, so let's move on here to number 5. Ruben, what's number 5?
Okay, my number 5 is on this list partially because it's very powerful, and I've learned that it's very powerful because I saw some chatter online. It's mostly on the list so that I can talk about what the card does because it is the most complicated card in the set to me. So I want to talk about what Springheart Nantuko does
Okay.
because
Yeah.
it's so like I did not grok it immediately. This is not a reading the card explains the card situation to me unless you know the language of Magic pretty detailed. So Springheart Nantuko is a 1/1 for 2 mana. It's an enchantment creature insect monk that bestows for 2 mana, which means that you can play it as an aura on a creature. So pretend that it isn't a creature for the time being. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay a generic and a green if Springheart Nantuko is attached to a creature you control. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature. If you didn't create a token this way, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. At first, I was like, what are you? I don't understand. Like, what is that phrasing for? In my head, the phrasing was to respond to like if you pay the ability and then they kill your creature and then Nantuko falls off, you make a 1/1, which it does do that. What I didn't fully understand was that Springheart Nantuko is effectively a Scute Swarm.
Mm-hmm.
It turns whatever you enchant into a Scute Swarm. So you landfall, you pay for it, and you get another of whatever Springheart Nantuko is enchanting. This can actually go infinite in a couple of ways, most notably with Nissa Who Shakes the World, where you can make an infinite number of tapped 3/3 forest spirits with vigilance and haste. If everything lines up correctly, they are all tapped, but we can figure out a way around that. And it's also just a value engine, right? Like it makes token copies of creatures that aren't normally tokens. So it does also go in those, what's that new commander? The Naya commander. Geared or something
Oh,
like that.
yeah.
Goes in that deck. It allows you to populate those tokens, even if you don't want to just play it fully straight and make a bunch of value.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this card
just
is
having
sick.
the thing you copy or you're attached to just come into play. I mean, depending on the ETBs you're getting, like that could be just powerful all on its own. You don't even need to be trying to go infinite. It's just like, even if you're only doing that once a turn or whatever, like that still could be strong with this card. Like
Right. I
this is going
need
to be one of those cards that gets a little bit nutty in commander games, I imagine.
Right. I need to know like the nut draw of like turn 1, what's the creature? What's the 1 mana creature? Because turn 2 you enchant it, turn 3 you fetch land, pay the mana, get the trigger, and then next turn you'll have the landfall ready to go for the next trigger and so on. So what is that magical 1 mana creature that will not kill itself like a Ragavan, I guess, because it doesn't make them non-legendary. But just thinking out loud of there's got to be something sweet, or maybe 2 mana and you delay it a turn. A lot more options there. But this card is dope, and there's that reason why it's pre-ordering for like $15, man. Holy cow, that's awesome. All right, let's move on here to number 5 for Power Dragon. What you got?
I have some more devoid nonsense.
Oh boy.
But Abstruse Appropriation. It's a 2 colorless white black instant with Devoid, but you exile target non-land permanent, which is always a set of words you like to see because one, it exiles it, not even sending it to the graveyard, which we've talked about being a thing in this set, but it's also any non-land permanent. So basically anything. And then, as a bonus, you can cast that card as long as it remains exiled, and you can spend colorless mana. Like, I don't even know why the rest of those words on here, but hey, why not, right? We just get to effectively steal a card in addition to killing it.
Yep.
I'm so
Like
glad you got this on here because this was my last cut.
Yeah, this card's incredible. Utter End was a card that saw play in standard that was exile target. It was effectively the first sentence: exile
Yeah.
target non-land permanent.
Yep.
It didn't have the rest of this. It also couldn't target creatures that were protection from black or protection from white.
Mm-hmm.
Hostage Taker is another card that comes to mind with this card, which was allowed to take either a creature or an enchant or an artifact, and then you could cast it later. But it was a fragile 2/3, and if they killed the Hostage Taker before you were able to capitalize, then things might go awry. This is the best of both of those worlds. Also reminds me of Fractured Identity, which is a card that is maybe one of my favorite cube cards of all time. It's slow, 4 mana for targeted removal, but it effectively steals their best thing. So for the cost of 4 mana to get rid of it, and then 4 or 5 the next turn to play it on your side, that is an incredible value in a black-white card.
Yeah, this card is bananas. I think this card is great. If anything, the 4 mana is the only thing keeping it like remotely kind of fair because most of the time,
oh, for sure,
people just hate getting their stuff stolen anyway. And the fact that you're like, get rid of that, give it over here to me. I'm going to be able to play it whenever I want for using any mana I want. You had to jump through some hoops, doesn't matter. I get it whenever. Like that whole thing, you basically disrupt their strategy, take their best stuff, like all in one. This to me is an easy cube slam, inclusion because you want to take their powerful stuff anyway. And yeah, I love the hell out of this card. Again, this was my last cut before my top 10. Card's dope. All right, let's move on, y'all, to my number 5. I love my number 5. It is cool. You can blame Jim Davis for this one because he wrote about this card, and the more I read, the more I was like, damn, this card is bananas. This card is Nadu, Winged Wisdom. This is the reason Shuko is $15, okay? Yep. If you're like, man, what the hell happened to Shuko? This card happened to it. Nadu Winged Wisdom is a blue-green and a generic mana for a rare legendary bird wizard. Also legendary, the only thing keeping this thing remotely in check. It was a 3/4 flyer. So for 3 mana, a 3/4 flyer plus awesome abilities. Let's just get that rate in there. So creatures you control have, quote, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it on the battlefield. Not tapped, by the way. Put it on the battlefield.
Wow.
Otherwise, put it in your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn. Only twice. Every single creature you control, you Shuko twice every single creature. You drew 4 cards if you only have 2 creatures. You got 2 lands that came into the battlefield untapped, or any of these cards in your hand. Jesus Christ, this thing is just value. It's stuffed in the side. It's that briefcase with the dollar bills just kind of poking out the outside because this thing is nuts.
Yeah, there's a lot you're going to be able to do with this card. The only thing about this card that I struggled with is just what does the rest of the deck look like?
Sure.
But if you can figure it out even halfway,
yeah,
you're going to have some dumb turns.
Yeah. There are a couple of cards in addition to Shuko that allow you to trigger them for free. The ones that come to mind most readily are the blue Phyrexian mana activated ability creatures like Spellskite and Unctus that allow you to pay 2 life to target and get the triggers. So that's pretty expensive for life early, but anything free, anything remotely free at all, like a tap ability,
right?
Like a Kiora's Follower, let's say, also is just really, really excellent.
Like, Spellskite's a good call here because it also protects your Nadu, right? Like, and possibly get you extra value. So it's like that's not a bad call.
Right. I mean, let's just imagine, right? So you're tapped out, okay? They Doomblade your Nadu. That's the last of their mana. They Doomblade your Nadu. You reveal an island. You put that island in play, you tap the mana, and then you spell pierce their Doomblade. Like, that can't happen. You're going to get a card when they try to kill this no matter what happens unless it's a sweeper. So, like, they try to kill it, you bounce it with a spell, you've just drawn 2 cards and they're down their removal spell. Like, oh my god, this card is amazing, and I just love it the more I look at it. It's crazy. All right, so let's move on here to number 4. Mine is higher, my final higher on the list, but that's okay because it's awesome. Ruben, what's number 4?
My number 4 is another callback to harkens to a previous card. A bad ending for a card that is much beloved and something I've cast many copies of in my time, being a Maverick aficionado in Legacy. It is unfortunate, but we all die, and sometimes when we die, we come back as weird zombies. And White of the Reliquary is here to continue the story. White of the Reliquary, of course, a callback to Knight of the Reliquary, is a black and a green for a 2/2 zombie knight with vigilance. White of the Reliquary gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard. And it has the ability to pay tap and sacrifice another creature, search your library for a land, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So, doesn't sacrifice a land to go get an untapped land, so it doesn't like ramp you. But it also costs 2 instead of 3. It gets +1 for each creature. There's a lot of really good stuff to like about this. There's so many like throwaway black creatures that have triggers when they die that you now also get a land out of. Also, this is Veteran Explorer's best friend, once again. Lots of stuff to love if you're a Veteran Explorer fan in this set. White of the Reliquary also goes really good with Fiend Artisan. There's a number of cards. There's a number of like black-green value decks. Chthonian Nightmare probably goes with Knight of the Reliquary real well. So this is just its own value engine and at the low cost of 2 mana.
The thing I liked about this, because when I was going over the set initially, I kind of overlooked it and I went back across it and I went, wait a minute, this dude has vigilance.
Yeah.
I was like, this changes everything, right? Because now it's like, okay, I can attack, maybe even with multiple things, and then whatever gets blocked, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm turning that into a land, right? Like, in addition to just now having another creature in the graveyard, so this thing's even bigger during the attack step. I was like, so it doesn't have has to be done as a sorcery or on your turn, right? It has vigilance. It's only 2 mana. And I'm like, is there a chance this is just better than Knight of the Reliquary? Because it's got way more going on.
I would honestly kind of hope so, that we've passed up Conflux or whatever in this time period.
Right.
But, I think ultimately the funniest part to me is the Vigilance. Like, we still have not seen the green-black 4/4 flying Vigilance card yet. They put it like they put like one of the joke sets or the silly stuff they do at the cons.
That was in a convention playtest card set, I think.
Yeah, because that was the silly thing. It's a big end joke. But anyway, the point is the vigilance on a green-black card is weird and rare. The fact that it works the way it does, I think, is wonderful. The vigilance does certainly fit and work in that regard. And I think the card's great. A lot of people are super excited about this card, which I think is awesome. All right, Power Dragon, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is one of the free spells that I hadn't really seen anybody talk about. And I don't know if I just missed it or the discussion or the hype, but Flare of Fortitude. So it's a 2 colorless white instant. You can sacrifice a non-token white creature instead rather than pay its cost. And then until end of turn, your life total can't change and your permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible. Like, we like every other card like this, right? Teferi's Protection, they all live or whatever. Everyone lives. Everything in that space. I'm like, this is just another one of those, but even better because this just protects your stuff. It doesn't necessarily leave the battlefield if you don't want it to. You can pay the cost or you can pay it for free by sacrificing a non-token white creature. Like, this is just a sweet card all around. Like, yeah, I expect this might even make main deck in some builds just because it gives you the hexproof and indestructible option at instant speed for virtually no cost.
I mean, this is the card I want to play in the humans deck, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Nice Supreme Verdict or whatever. Like,
right.
The only thing you're going to get them is -X at that point. Because, all of a sudden nothing happens. Your life total can't change. Like, there are things that you can pay life for that won't let you do that because your life total can't change. I think it's kind of funny. But again,
Right.
they also can't kill you, which is
That's
kind of
that's my question is does this work with ad nauseum or is this an anti-combo with
No.
ad
It's an
nauseum?
anti. It literally won't let you.
Anti-combo?
Yeah, it won't
Okay.
let it change, so
Yeah.
you can't pay.
So
So
it
just
can't
like
doesn't work with Bolus's Citadel either.
no, because you have to pay a life.
Yeah, it's too
Yeah.
bad.
You know, though, this does block grape shot when you're tapped out.
Sure.
True.
Hell yeah.
Your opponent stacks up all those triggers, like, here we go. Like, no, you don't.
I do love that. I love the way that they worded that. They didn't say something like your life total can't go below 0 or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
They said it cannot change. Really awesome wording there. And the reason, again, this is like $13+ pre-ordering right now. And I think that's cool. So let's move on here to number 3 because one good flare deserves another. Don't they all? And this is certainly the one that's gotten all the hype, and I can't help but be pulled right into it because that's Flare of Denial. Flare of Denial is the blue one. It's 2 blue and a generic mana for a rare instant that says you may sacrifice a non-token blue creature rather than pay this spell's mana cost to counter target spell. Often that basically says you sacrifice a non-token merfolk because that's the deck it's going in
Yep.
or whatever. And let's hope it's good. I mean, it's already proven for $36 because, of course, anything that says, no mana counter spell, everybody's in. But sacrificing a non-token creature is important. You had to pay the mana to get the creature out there. The creature had to live and not get killed, by the way. And then they had to cast a spell that you wanted to counter while that creature is out there, not winning the game for you, but now sacrificing itself for some mana. So there's a lot of push and pull on this where, this is the one that I think that reads incredible, but may not play as powerful as we think it is.
Agreed.
Though, free spells are always going to be popular. Like, in this feel like you're saying right now, I think we all kind of go, well, obviously Merfolk wants this card. But it's kind of like, all right, is there something else, though, that wants this? Is there some it type build that plays blue and red creatures that would still qualify to sacrifice this, right? Like, maybe this makes some decks more viable because they have to tap out with their creatures or whatever, and this now gives you a potential counter backup option. So this might fit in some places we're not really thinking of right off the top of our heads.
Yeah. I mean, when I saw this card, the first card I thought of was Hard Evidence. Just gives you an 0/3 crab. The crab is blue, right?
Crab's a token,
I'm pretty
though.
sure.
Yeah, it's a token.
Oh, it's a token. Oh,
Yeah.
that doesn't work.
Non-token.
Never mind. Well, how about like Spyglass Siren?
Yeah.
Which still gives you a token, but gives you a non-token creature, right? So that kind of thing where you have what I want is to keep some amount of the 1 mana of value when I play the creature. And so
Sure.
there aren't that many options as it pertains to that, but there's a lot of opportunity there, and the fact that you have Flare of Denial as the opportunity cost now will make a bunch of those 1-drops that probably weren't seeing play in blue decks outside of Merfolk playable again. So things like Judge's Familiar or Mist Caller or some Curse Catcher kind of situation to make Flare of Denial playable.
We shall see. It is very exciting, though. Ruben, what's number 3?
My number 3 is the only hire on the list, and let me tell you, everybody, it's the least surprising hire I've had in a very long time.
There you go. Power Dragon, what's number 3?
My number 3, I talked about this a week ago, and man, I can't quit this card. Like, I keep looking at the set, and I keep thinking about it, of all the dumb things I can do with it, and it's Eladamri Corvik. Colorless green for 3/3 legendary elf warrior. You can look at the top card of your library at any time. You can cast creature spells from the top of your library. Full stop, no restrictions, just any creature off the top. And then if you just happen to not have mana, you can pay a green, tap this guy, and 2 untapped creatures you control. Reveal cards from your hand or the top of your library. And you reveal a creature card this way, you put it onto the battlefield. Like, this just allows all kinds of silliness. Like, if you have anything that's triggering when they come into play and get you mana, anything to untap creatures, let you get extra things into play. Even if you find a way to draw cards, you can still put stuff into play from your hand. Like, there's a lot going on with this card, and it just happens to be a reasonable size body as well. So, like, any variation of elves at a minimum wants this card. But I can think of several type of aggressive decks that might want the hell. Mono green aggro might even want this card.
I
When
was
you
just
have
gonna
all the
say.
extra mana from Nykthos or
Yep.
whatever, it's just like play another couple bodies off the top of the library. Why not? Like
Yeah.
this card's silly.
My number 9.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Nice.
Elves, Devotion, Gruul midrange, like everything from putting, it just kind of draws cards, just it is
Yeah.
value. And then, oh, by the way, you can also sneak in a Craterhoof Behemoth or a Galta.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah, and much like I was saying last week, was the Stoneforge Mystic is a lot of what this feels like. It is its
Mhm.
own enabler. You don't need to do anything else to make this card awesome. Just put awesome creatures in your deck and resolve it. Like
Mhm.
the one thing holding this card back is 3 toughness. That's pretty much it. There's not
Yep.
a lot
yeah.
of flaws left in it.
Yeah.
Um,
I will say, I think that this set, as we're talking about our top tens, mana dorks through the roof, value through the roof
Oh yeah.
for
Yeah.
one drops that produce mana. Ignoble Hierarch will let you play Necrodominance on turn 2. Every mana dork will let you play this on turn 2. All the flares, and especially the green one, like it's a good day to be a 1/1 for one that taps for a green.
It really is. And my favorite bit about this card is the core Vec Doll part, where the core and the
Yes.
Vec and the Doll from Tempest era Magic all came together, and he basically united the 3 different factions, and that's why
That's
he's
right.
the core Vec Doll.
Well, you need to
It's
be able to
really cool
get
stuff.
some value out of your 1/1s because of all those stupid orcs running around. So, we got to do
True.
something.
Oh, the stupid works. Oh my goodness. Let's move on here to number 2. Ruben, what's number 2?
So we talked about one of the creatures that is a legendary flip card. I'm interested in all of them, to be fair, but I think that there's very clearly, to me, one that is head and shoulders above the rest on the front side. A Johnny making a 2/1 and a 1/2, very good. Uh, you know, Ral is not super impressive. Tamio being a flyer that makes values a little impressive. Grist a little impressive. But there's a 1/4 for 2 mana with lifelink and extort. And that's it. Like, I don't need the rest of the card of Sorin House of Markov. I'm already sold on 1/4 for 2 mana with lifelink and extort. Legendary creature Human Noble does in fact have lifelink and extort. And at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, if you gained 3 or more life this turn, exile Sorin, then return him to the battlefield transformed under his owner's control into Sorin Ravenous Neonate, who also has extort and enters with 3 loyalty, +2 make a food, -1. Sorin deals damage equal to the amount of life you gained this turn to any target, and -6, gain control of target creature. It becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. Put a lifelink counter on it if you control a white permanent other than that creature or Sorin. So, very easy play pattern is we play, let's say, a Soul's Attendant on turn 1. We play Sorin on turn 2. We play another Soul's Attendant on turn 3, gain 1 life. Attack with Extort, gain another life. Attack with Sorin, gain another life. Flip Sorin, -1, Lightning Helix. Or lightning bolt, actually,
Right.
to a creature for a -1. And that's it. I mean, the value here is insane off the wall.
It's a cool card, man. I'm not going to lie. And the fact that it's a 1/4 really matters because, even in like the sequence you laid out, like you still get to attack pretty much with impunity, right? Because there's not going to be much that's going to kill them if they block. So you will get the 3 life in those types of draws, which enable it to do everything else it wants to do. Like, this is a pretty cool card.
This is a very strong, very cool card. This is pre-ordering for like $24+ at this point, and I can definitely see why. For those who don't remember, Extort says whenever you cast a spell, you may pay a white or a black mana, technically the hybrid. If you do, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain that much life. So now, basically, every one of your spells has kicker of white-black hybrid, and you always do that because you want to extort them, and that's how that works. This is one of the cards that you get for pre-ordering the set on Arena, and I think there's a good reason for that. Tamio's up there as well, but I agree, I just don't see Tamio. Maybe she's probably
It's going to
the
be
best one.
harder. Tamio's going to be tougher.
Yeah.
Tamio is a value engine, but it's going to be harder for Tamio.
Yeah, but this one is just really clearly, it's priced to move. You know what I'm saying? If you want to think of it that way, that card wants to do things that are pretty scary. Power Dragon, what's number two?
I want to use this time to tell people we're talking about a lot of prices on these cards, but you can still save over at our friends at Cool Stuff Inc. if you use the code Magic Mikes. So just want to put that out there if you're thinking about buying some cards. But my number two is actually somebody's number one, which doesn't surprise me at all.
Nice. All right, let's get you in there officially. Some technical issues. Let's move on here to that higher to my number two. My number two is the card that I expect to see a ton of play. I mean, a metric butt ton. You can quote me on that amount. A butt ton of play is how much White Orchid Phantom is going to see play in our modern metagame in that timeless world where I get to live in from time to time. This card is bananas. It is 2 white mana for a 2/2 flying first striker. Let's just start about the rate. That's a lovely rate. Good abilities. But when it enters the battlefield, you destroy, that also matters, you destroy up to one target non-basic land. Its controller may search the library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Yay! This is the land destruction that I need in my life. They finally Path to Exiled the Stone Rain. And we got there on a white dork, no less. And I appreciate the fact that it's not a human or a soldier, honestly.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah. I mean, Spirit is still a relevant creature type. I hope that we get to continue to see Spirits as an archetype. This card's just incredible. 2/2 for 2, flying first strike. Like, we're already doing good. Then we get the Cleansing Wildfire ability to take out a Tron land, to take out a Cloud Post, whatever, what have you. There's nothing to not like about this card.
Remember when Thunder Spirit used to be something?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a Thunder Spirit for like 1 less mana and a sweet ability attached to it.
Yeah.
Like, this is just cool. Like, and honestly, I'm with you. I think it's cool that it is a spirit. I mean, Knight doesn't really matter, but spirits get thrown a bone here and get an actually really useful card here for breaking up Tron and other things that are going to be pretty useful.
And callback, old school callback to Flagstones of Troycaire. All the way back in Time Spiral, is still legal in the format. When it's put in the graveyard, you search your library for a plains.
Hell yeah.
Battlefield tapped. So get that value. Do whatever you got to do. Super fun, super neat. I just think that card is absolutely rad. Let's move on here to our number one. Ruben, what is your number one?
We've talked a lot about... We've talked a lot today about a lot of cards, ladies and gentlemen. But when you have, across any set, you have there's a couple of universal truths. Those universal truths are, when it says the word Lotus, you pay attention. When it says the word Mox, you pay attention. When it's a 2-cost burn spell that deals 3 damage or more, you pay attention. We have some universal truths. And one of those universal truths is, if it's a mythic, and it costs 1 mana, you pay attention to it. We actually have 4 1-mana mythics in this set, 2 of which are Tamiyo and Grist. Yeah. So, I mean, those are pretty obvious to pay attention to, right? You have the legendary flipped Planeswalkers. The other one has the word Goyf in it. Nether Goyf. Also worth paying attention to. Those ones, I think, are easy to spot coming from a mile away. In my opinion, though, the most powerful of the mythic 1-drops is a cute little kitty cat. It's one that is less, you assume less of it. It is also the only card with Ascend in the set. It has a lot of words that you might want to skip over, but I urge you not to on Ocelot Pride.
My number 4.
That was my number 2.
We're all on the same page on this card. Ocelot Pride is a 1/1 for a white mana creature cat. It is a mythic with first strike and lifelink, and has Ascend, which says if you control 10 or more permanents, you get the city's blessing for the rest of the game. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained life this turn, create a 1/1 white cat creature token. Then, if you have the city's blessing, for each token you control that entered the battlefield this turn, create a token that's a copy of that token. So, tokens are real easy to help you get to the city's blessing in the first place. Then, it's a 1/1 with first strike and lifelink, so you're already gaining some life. You're already playing white, so you can play a bunch of those gain life abilities. You can play this alongside a Soul's Attendant, a Heliod, a Soul Warden. There's so much that you can play alongside of it. And it asks almost nothing of you. It asks you to play a 1/1 for 1 in your deck. And the prizes that you are given, the gifts that you receive for the opportunity cost of playing Ocelot Pride are many and continuous over the entire game.
Like,
Man, this almost, and I don't know if we're there, but this makes me really think that like a cat deck might actually be possible now. Like
I mean,
with this turn 1, you get a Johnny's Pride Mate on turn 2. Maybe you're playing a Johnny himself and getting a couple of bodies. Like I don't know, but like this card's nuts. Like this card is so good.
like let me tell you a real sick story, okay? Turn 1 Ocelot Pride, turn 2 Ocelot Pride.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
my god, just two
exactly.
of these things are just like brr, 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 brr. You get to ascend in 2 turns, like absolutely ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. This literally makes me happy that Bowmasters exist, and that's weird because like it is holding this together. There's a reason Jace didn't take over till Bloodbraid left. There's a reason the Bowmasters are kind of needed when they make cards like these that are just like, Jesus Christ, 2 turns of this thing being unleashed is 2 turns too many, man. It copies any token that you made once you got Ascend going. Any token whatsoever. I mean, God almighty. There's a million different ways to make awesome tokens, and this thing just copies them. And again, playing turn 1 on this, turn 2 another copy. You got 6 permanents on the board by the end of that turn. Like, for God's sake. At the end of the next turn, you're exploding. Like, woof.
Yeah.
There's a reason this isn't all 1/2. That's all I'm saying. There's a
There's
real
a lot
reason.
of options with this. I mean, and it's so easy to gain life a bunch of different ways.
Good.
Right. And if they don't play anything, you're like, great, I'll just attack with the Ocelot, gain a life. Right. Like it's still a first striking life linker.
Still
And if you have
anything,
anything that pumps the thing, well, now they don't even have good blocks because it has first strike.
yeah, there's
Yeah,
no
silly
downside
card.
here. There's absolutely nothing wrong. This is as close to White's Ragavan I think that you can get right now because they piled on the goodness and it's there. And damn, that card's sweet. Let's move on here to Power Dragons number 1. What you got?
I saved it for the end. And Eldrazi. Emrakul the World Anew. For a whopping 12 mana that most people will not pay a natural 12 mana ever, you get a 12/12 Legendary Eldrazi. When you cast this spell, gain control of all creatures target player controls. Not even till end of turn. Not any special restriction on them. You just get them. And it also happens to have flying, protection from all spells and from permanents that were cast this turn. So you have to get rid of it with something that's already in play effectively. And when Emrakul World Anew leaves the battlefield, sacrifice all creatures you control. So your opponent doesn't even ever get a chance to get those things back. Everything just goes away with it. And madness of pay 6 colorless, or actually, I guess, waste mana. But yeah, this is like this card just makes me mad. I don't even know what to say about it.
It's $70 right now. This card is ridiculous. I just, when they throw much like we're getting to the point, in the Lotuses and the Moxen words of the world, when you say Emrakul, the creature's going to be absolutely ridiculous. It's just going to be ridiculous, and I don't even know where to begin when it's this ridiculous. You're like, okay, if there's a discard madness deck, here's what you want to be doing.
I mean, I think it's honestly worth paying 12 mana for this. I'm not going to jump through a bunch of hoops to try to find a discard outlet for this. That seems like it might just weaken my deck rather than putting more Wingdings in my deck to cast this for 12. I mean, we've cast Emrakul's for 15. I'm not afraid to get up there and steal your entire board.
Eladamri might just throw it on the battlefield. That's
too.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, at least you wouldn't steal your opponent's stuff because you didn't actually cast it. So it's almost fair at that point, but it's going to be hard as hell to kill anyway.
Yeah.
Wild.
I mean, it's kind of just silly. Protection from spells and from permanents that were cast this turn. It's just like, that's, you cast that spell this turn? Okay, cool. Thanks,
here's
man.
another interesting thing about the way it's worded too. It's that when it leaves the battlefield, so even if you do have something that exiles it or whatever, like sacrifice all creatures you control. Well, if you already have stuff that wants to be in the graveyard, or you're reanimating things, or stuff that triggers when stuff dies, like you almost get put in a situation where you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, if you kill Emrakul.
Right. Like you kind of want to bounce it to your own hand
Yeah.
sometimes so that you can do it to another player in your commander game, or have another just one-sided wrath every turn.
Yeah, this card
it's
is
crazy, man.
Emrakul. I mean, she always brings it. You know, there's no chill in that girl. She is all gas, no brakes. All right, so let's move on here to my number one here, and this to me is a card that I've called out before, but I love it, and I think it's brilliant, and I think it's the most important sideboard card that's been made in 12 years, which is also very, very important because it's Vexing Bauble. Vexing Bauble is nuts. Another $7+ uncommon in this set because obviously another card that I am so thankful is not rare or mythic because it'd be $1 million. This card is the perfect, this is what we need right now. This is the hero that we need right now because you can make more free spells moving forward because this stopgap exists. This trick, this trap for them to walk into does exist. Now, doesn't have flash or anything, but they're going to have to get around it somehow. Vexing Bauble is 1 generic mana for an uncommon artifact that says whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. And it has 1 generic mana, tap, sack, draw a card. So it effectively has cycling of 2 generic mana, as cycling is, but also stops an absolute broad swath of anything your opponent is going to be doing in these older, crazier formats. Nice force of will you got there.
Yeah, this is one of those cards I'm expecting to be a $10, $12 uncommon before too long, and even end up being the type of card that probably gets reprinted every time we make another Modern Horizon set, just to keep it in rotation, because it's going to be that good.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many decks in Modern and Legacy that this counters. Not only does it counter Force of Will and Grief, which are both extremely highly played in their various formats, it also helps fight against Cascade. It fights against the new Flares and all of the other elementals, not to mention Moxen and Black Lotuses that cost 0 mana. So 100% agree. This card was my number 3, as should be obvious at this point, and is also a bauble. Like, usually when you have a sideboard card that is especially this low of a cost, the opportunity cost is that it doesn't have an effect against some decks. Cards like Pithing Needle or Grafdigger's Cage, they're very, very powerful in the right situations, but then they just sit in play. This card asks even less of you. This card says if it's not relevant, you can draw a card. You can just cycle it from play.
Yeah, I've spoken to multiple vintage players at this point who are just like, yeah, I'm going to buy 1 copy because they're vintage. They only have to buy 1 of anything. But it'll be there, and you can get it with Urza's Saga, which is also super huge and important. And it'll live in sideboards from now until Magic's done.
Yep, till the end of time.
This thing just hoses stuff the right way, and that's the way you need it hosed. So, that said, that is our top 10 along here. You'll see them on the screen right now. If you're a review, take a look at my list, Power Dragon's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to highlight in our next top 10. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Power Dragon.
Hey, it was good to be here, and the Eldrazi didn't get me, so we're all right.
Nice. Thank you, Ruben.
That's right. We at least were given the promised end, but there's still hope for the future.
Nice. We're going to move here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com. Use the promo code MagicMikes when you're shopping on that site. Our co-sponsor, ManaTraders.com. My co-host, Power Dragon, Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, as well as TikTok at MagicMikesCast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.